Welcome to our Parental's Boundaries seminar. There are three things on this video that we're going to deal with. Parental boundaries being the most important, what they are and how to set them. We're also going to learn about contentious issues and how to deal with those, and which issues we have no control over, but other ways to handle those issues. Remember back to the time when we were dealing with teenage characteristics. One of the things we said was that teenagers want boundaries created for them, and certainly the younger they are, the more boundaries they need, and the older they are, the fewer. The problem with teenagers is lots of parents don't have any boundaries as really young kids because they didn't feel like they needed them, and then as they head into their teenage years, they start to tighten their grip and tighten their grip. In fact, it should be exactly the opposite. The amount of control that a parent has over their young person should get increasingly less as the years move on. And so in the younger adolescent years, there needs to be more control, obviously, than there is in the later teen years. And so parents often make this mistake. If you're not quite clear what parental boundaries are all about, let me cite the example of the school teacher. Most of us had a school teacher that nobody in the class had any respect for. They didn't treat that school teacher the same way as they treated other teachers. Things went on in the classroom that wouldn't go on in another classroom. And that's because that school teacher wasn't able to set boundaries for herself or himself or for others in the class. They didn't do their job of taking care of themselves and making sure others in the class were taken care of. And there was very little respect earned. It's really hard to put your fingers on why that was, what they did to contribute to that, except for the fact that they weren't clear, there weren't guidelines with consequences. And so when you had a good teacher that had control of things, that good teacher had personal boundaries. And maybe that helps you a little bit understand the idea of creating personal boundaries or parental boundaries. As a parent, you're creating the same kinds of boundaries as that teacher that I talked about, the successful teacher that managed the classroom well. And those boundaries are the ones that say, I respect myself and I need you to respect me as well. So you create expectations for your young person that demand that kind of respect. When it comes to learning to be a parent who's setting boundaries for themselves, a lot of parents ask me, what kinds of issues are the type that require those kinds of boundaries? And I'm talking about issues that affect you negatively or affect the family. So we're talking about issues like disrespect, smoking in your house, driving your car, helping out around the house with specific chores, all of those issues that say that I'm not going to be used in any kind of way. The reason it's so important to address these issues and to set up some guidelines for them that are clear and concise is because you're modeling for the young person. You're modeling and saying to them that I'm healthy enough to take care of myself and I want you to be the same way, because that's how we want them to go into adulthood, feeling well and being able to set boundaries and assert themselves. So how do we set boundaries as parents? Well, the key to good parenting, I believe, is patience. And so you need to wait until you can find an appropriate time to sit down in a non-confrontational way with your young person and clarify these boundaries. And the first thing I would suggest you to do is to find a place where you're not going to be interrupted again, because any conversation is better served in a quiet atmosphere. The second thing I would suggest that you do is to deliver your message in a caring way. So you let them know that this is an important issue for you because you want the relationship to be better and you want there to be lots of respect and that sort of thing in the relationship. Once you've done that, I would get you to clarify the behaviors that aren't acceptable to you. And instead of those behaviors, I would get you to give them some choices about what you would expect them to do. So for example, if the rule is that their friends can't smoke in the home, then you would give them some alternatives for that you would expect them to follow through on. Once you've given them some choices, the next step is to let them know what the consequences are going to be if those things aren't followed through on. And often, once again, I would let the young person participate in the decision making about whatever the consequences are going to be. So all of those steps put in place will help you to create some guidelines and some boundaries that will initiate some respect in the family, and particularly if the consequences are followed through on. So that's your final task as a parent, is to make sure there's some consistency in the expectations and the follow through in terms of the consequences. The following section demonstrates 4 of the 5 steps. Consequencing is offered as a seminar on its own. For the sake of demonstration, however, I'll tell you that in the case of non-compliance, I determined that I would withdraw my services until I received a sincere apology. When we talk about setting boundaries as a parent, one of the big issues that parents deal with often is disrespect. And it's not okay to have your young person be disrespectful to you. It's your responsibility to make sure the boundaries are clear and set. This is not a time to use effective listening, because effective listening doesn't give you the power that you need to get the message across. So this is a case of you delivering a message in a clear, concise way. Sally, once again, is going to help me with that. So, Sally, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is, I've noticed lately that we've been getting into some fairly big confrontations, and I've noticed that your voice is getting louder and louder when you're dealing with me, and we almost get to a point where we're shouting. And, you know, you're a really good person, and I suspect at the end of that you probably feel a little bit bad that we've gotten to the point that we did. So one of the things that I want you to know is that I'm not going to put myself in that position anymore where I'm kind of taking that verbal abuse. So I want you to know that you have 2 choices from here on in if our conversations get to a point where you're becoming more heated and more animated. First of all, I'm going to tell you that that's disrespect, just in case you don't know that you're being disrespectful. And then I'm going to say to you, Sally, you have 2 choices. One is either to change your tone with me while you're talking and continue on, or the other one is to walk away and cool down, and we'll come back later and talk about the issue. I'm fine about that. So those are your 2 options, and I will remind you that we're being disrespectful. I want you to remember that the reason that we're doing this is because it's really important to me that we have a good relationship. And I don't think abusive language or abusive interaction is going to help us to have a good relationship. Okay. In this demonstration, I'm forced to go right into the consequencing stage. Why so blunt, Sally?
Well, I was running around all morning trying to get my stuff together, and I didn't even have time to eat a lunch today because I didn't have time to make it in the morning. And you were just sitting there doing nothing when I could have
Whoa, hang on a minute, young lady. That's being disrespectful. And do you remember what we talked about disrespect? You have 2 choices right now. Either you calm down and talk to me calmly, or you walk away and we'll talk about this later. But I will not accept that kind of conversation.
Okay. I'll calm down.
Okay. So now, what would you like to say?
Well, I think that if you see me running around in the morning, and you can take from that I might not have time to make a lunch, it'd be nice if you could make a lunch for me.
Remember, I told you that I let Sally know that if she chose not to comply with our agreement, that I would withdraw my services until I received a sincere apology. Why so blunt, Sally?
Well, today I was running around in the morning so fast, I had no time to make a lunch, and I didn't eat a lunch today. Well, you were sitting there drinking your coffee and doing whatever the heck you want to do.
Whoa, just stop.
No, I don't want to stop. I want to say what I have to say.
Hang on.
You're not letting me.
You know what? I'm walking away right now, and I'd be glad to cook you your meal for dinner when I receive a sincere apology for this.
Fine, whatever.
For me, there are 3 areas of concerns for parents. The first one that we've talked about is the personal boundary issue. There's a second set of issues that are very negotiable issues that give your young person lots of choices, and we're going to talk about those in another video, including how to go about doing that. The third set of issues are your no control issues. Young people need to individuate, and they need to have some areas that they call their own where they get to act out this individuation. They can't any longer just be a carbon copy of you. And the things that go on outside your house are the ones you have no control over, because you can't supervise your young person 24 hours a day.
You can forbid your teen to do something, but you create an opportunity for the teen that they love to win in a power struggle and be defiant. How would you, even as an adult, react if somebody forbade you to do something? A better way to handle these issues is to put a positive spin on them while communicating to your child that you trust them. You are indirectly creating expectations and still have a chance to state your concerns or opinions. And you've eliminated the power struggle.
Where are you off to tonight, Sally?
I'm going out with Bob and Charlie.
Well, you know I'm not very fond of them, but I respect your right to make your own choices about your friends, and I happen to think they're awfully lucky to have you for a friend.
Thank you.
Another issue is drugs. We know that a lot of young people are exposed to drugs all over the place, no matter where they go. So let's see what this does. Sally, I hear you're going to a party tonight.
Yes.
I suspect there are going to be some drugs there, because I've certainly heard that a lot of people are using drugs these days. You know, I want to tell you how good it feels that your dad and I can trust you, that you've learned to make really good decisions for yourself. We're very proud of you.
Great, thanks.
The final thing I want to talk to you about in this video is contentious issues. As we all know, it's a teenager's job to individuate from us, and so often they'll espouse values that are very different from our own. And lots of parents get in a real panic about that, but remember, most of the values you've taught your young person have been done in the early years, and so they haven't lost the values you've taught them. They just are needing to check out different things. And the best thing you can do if you hear something that feels really off the wall for you is to just say, I can understand you feeling like that, or believing that as a teenager. Or something else you can say is, I suspect when you reach adulthood you'll feel very differently about that, but it's fine where you are right now. Or the final thing that you can say is, we can agree to disagree on that. That way you're very clear still that you hold your values very close to your heart, but you respect their right to have some values too. But know that what they're talking about right now is not necessarily the values that they're going to live as an adult, so not to worry about it. The three techniques that we've used in this video all contribute to a better relationship with your young people. They communicate respect, they communicate that you trust the young person, they give an opportunity for the young person to minimize the confrontation that they have with you, and they help teach the young person all kinds of skills. So if you can incorporate these three techniques in any capacity into your relationship with your young person, you're the winner for it. Following this video, in the archives, there's a worksheet around parental boundaries that you might find useful before you do your work with your young person. So feel free to download that. The other sets of issues that sit out there are the ones that can be negotiated, and there's a whole seminar on negotiating with your teenager. So I would encourage you to take a look at that seminar once you've incorporated these techniques into your parenting skills. And we'll catch you in the next seminar.